Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1001 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at the Smashing Pumpkins' 1993 album, Siamese Dream. Siamese Dream was produced under the Virgin label with production by Billy Corgan and Butch Vig, art direction Len Peltier, Nationality USA, and a running time of 62 minutes and 8 seconds. This album, Siamese Dream, is often regarded by most as a classic of the 90s and a must-listen to most Smashing Pumpkins fans, but me personally, I have never really heard anything by the Smashing Pumpkins other than what has played on the radio, such as Today in 1979. So I went into this pretty blind for the most part, not really sure what to expect other than the signature staples from those songs. And what I got, I found to be a little bit more disappointing, maybe given the amount of hype behind this album, or maybe the Smashing Pumpkins really isn't something just for me. But even still, this album does have a lot to offer for music fans. The opening track here, Cherub Rock, is about Billy Corgan's disdain and hatred for the business side of the music industry, as it feels like a lot of artists are willing to completely sell out and jeopardize their creative freedom just to make a bit more cash. And it's a side of the music industry that Billy Corgan obviously doesn't have much appreciation for, and he really hates how something so important and artistic can be turned into a money machine, as most people in that industry would. This is a pretty fantastic track to kick off the album as well because of the very signature things that come into play here. The sharp, piercing guitars really mix well into the sound here, and on top of that, Billy Corgan's voice has that signature and iconic, almost hush-like vocals that he always delivers. And this pairing is pretty important for the Smashing Pumpkins sort of style, and especially throughout this album. The Smashing Pumpkins is also known to employ a heavy use of guitar overdubbing to create these very vivid and luscious soundscapes, which ultimately puts them a bit more into a dream pop realm and more of a sonic textured realm, which pushes them outside of the alt-rock sort of genre into something a bit more out there and unique. For example, one of my favorite songs on the album, Geek USA, uses an extreme use of overdubbed guitars to create this massive and luscious soundscape. In fact, the overdubbing is so extreme that Geek USA uses nearly 30 overdubbed guitars in just this song alone, and over the course of this 5 minutes, it really comes together and unifies as just one massive wall of sound. There is a brief moment in the 2-minute mark of this song where this sound is stripped back and Billy Corgan's voice is also stripped back and a bit more hushed, a bit more quiet, just like a calm before the storm-like effect, as just after this there are 2 massive guitar solos by Corgan himself, the first of which is maybe one of the best guitar solos to come out of any 90s song ever. He really pushes his guitar solo to the limit in this song, and he does it a second time, although maybe not to the same degree, but still just as effective. And overdubbed guitars are used extensively as well in the second track, Quiet, in which Corgan delves into his abusive relationship with his parents as they abused him as a child, and how this affected him growing up and made him into the person he is today. And there's this heavy guitar riff throughout this entire song, as well as just a great use of overdubbed guitars and an incredible performance by Billy Corgan here, where all of it unified as one and comes together as one just great track. Not personally, in my opinion, the best track or the best use of overdubbed, as again, I think Geek USA did that, but this song, Quiet, is still a fantastic listen and really shows off just how much the Smashing Pumpkins can do with these techniques. One of the songs I don't like on the album is the song Disarm, which I kind of gone back and forth on whether or not I like it, and some days maybe I just enjoy it a bit more than others, but for the most part I often come back to the fact that this song feels far too melodramatic. I understand the personal aspect of this track and the overwhelming weight and seriousness of the topic of this song, again dealing with child abuse and Billy Corgan dealing with that as a child, but even still, the tone and performance that Billy Corgan gives off in this song feels extremely dated in today's day and age and feels a bit more whiny and nasal and uninteresting than usual. The over-the-top dramatic fashion feels kind of tacky and honestly feels like a Creed song before Creed even existed. The absolute drama of this track, to me, just really taints the whole thing. But luckily, that's really the only song that I strongly have a dislike for, I would say, as there are just many fantastic songs that make up this album. Specifically, my two favorite being Soma and Silverfuck. Soma is a much more gentle song for the Smashing Pumpkins and kind of moves away from the noisy and loudness of most of the tracks. There are definitely loud moments in this one song, but for the most part, it takes on a much more gentle approach. Corgan's performance here feels much more grounded and realistic and a bit more tolerable than the performance he was giving on Disarm. And I think on top of that, this song's themes of feeling disconnected and empty and numb are touched upon quite well by Billy Corgan here as well. The second half of this track is taken up by this heavy, crashing-like instrumental that really does shake up the song quite a bit and keep it from going stale and destroying its own pace. The pacing of this song is pretty strong and works to its effect with this slow build up to this loud crash effect. And because of this, it works for one of my favorite songs on this album. There's also the incredibly long song Silverfuck, as I've mentioned, being one of my favorites. Because really, to me, this song feels like it just has every staple that I enjoy about the Smashing Pumpkins put into one 8-minute track. It has passages of the song that are more laid back and stripped back as Corgan sings these nice hushed vocals and performs quite beautifully in these passages, while at the same time there is very much a heavy use of the overdubbed guitars that we've come to know on this album. And when it comes together, it is such a heavy, incredibly loud crashing of sound that it's like a tsunami of sound just hitting the listener and just berating you with all these guitar effects. The production on this song as well is just so clean and crisp, while at the same time balancing this raw and authentic effect. I like the lyrics of this song too because it isn't as direct as a lot of Smashing Pumpkins songs and it goes a bit for more of a subtle-like effect, which leaves a nice bit of mysticism around it. And overall, over the course of this 8 minutes, I think it is just the perfect Smashing Pumpkins song. So overall, even though this isn't an album that I necessarily will be coming back to too often, as the Smashing Pumpkins isn't necessarily my style and my vibe, I think there is a lot to offer for music fans, and I think it's definitely an essential listen. Some could argue that the 90s style here seems a bit dated to some, but I think that is far and few in between on this album and really only shines with a couple of tracks here. So for the most part, this album is pretty consistently good and offers so much for music fans. The soft rating of this album for me came to a 7.8 out of 10, but I'll go ahead and bump that up to a hard rating of an 8 out of 10. And on top of that, I would like to say that this is definitely an essential listen for the reasons I have previously mentioned. This is just a great listen for rock fans and for people who want to diversify their musical palette. And on top of that, the Smashing Pumpkins is a pretty iconic band at this point, and I think listening to Siamese Dream, the album that really kicked off their career in such a grand and important way, is definitely worthy of a listen. So with that all being said, definitely essential and a hard rating of 8 out of 10. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this review. Let's go ahead and see what the next album you're going to listen to is in the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. Random number generator, 1 to 1001, generate. 181 is the next one we are listening to, which will be 181 being the Carpenters' 1970 album, Close to You. So go ahead and give that a listen, and I'll review it in exactly 1 week from now. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe if you want to follow along and listening to every single album from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe. Thanks for watching, and I'm signing off.